Africa has a lot to learn from the Romans. Just like the Romans were willing to learn from nations like ancient Egypt and Ethiopia, today Africa must be willing to learn from Rome. In this series, I will take a look at some of the principles and ideas of ancient Rome that I think can still be of benefit to Africa today. To get an idea of what the Romans valued, what they valued so much that they were willing to bet their lives on, let's look at the Roman Phalanx. As many of you know, the Phalanx was a battlefield formation that had Roman soldiers standing shoulder to shoulder in ranks and rows. The Phalanx was used in the early stages of the rise of Rome. With their shields interlocked, like a solid wall of determination and unbreakable willpower, they would use the phalanx and go on to conquer the world around them. Although the phalanx was used in states much earlier than Rome, like with most things, the Romans did it with greater discipline and determination, and also greater success. To me, the phalanx is a symbol that embodies what the Romans were all about. The phalanx required cohesion, discipline, and coordination. You had to trust the man to your left and you had to trust the man to your right with your life. When they locked their shields together and lined up properly and charged forward in a disciplined manner, they became an unstoppable force that changed history forever. Earlier in the Republican age of Rome, the phalanx allowed them to defeat an enemy, and then, through treaties and agreements, they would incorporate these vanquished enemies as allies of Rome, who would then be called on to reinforce the Romans in future battles with other enemies. This cycle of using military discipline and standardization led to an ever-growing and disciplined military superpower, an unstoppable world-conquering force. So the phalanx, with its soldiers standing shoulder to shoulder in battle, created solidarity and brotherhood. Later in the story of Rome, they adopted more flexible formations than the phalanx, but they kept the core ideas of discipline, cohesion, and unity of purpose. But now, they would divide their legions into smaller, more maneuverable units. The design engineer in me would say that they chose a more modular design for their legions. But these modular units still had that shoulder to shoulder disciplined formation. This speaks to how the Romans were able to organize their military in such a way that it had discipline, flexibility, and now the ability to grow through alliances. Africa can learn a lot from this. Since organization is at the heart of development, African communities need to learn to be more organized in society. We should have more smaller organized groups that address our issues from a micro scale to a macro scale. If you look at the modern world, the institutions that dominate the world are highly organized structures. Whether it's a listed company with many shareholders or powerful governments, they all have high levels of organization and coordination. It starts with building small sports clubs or charity organizations or even business forums in your local area. And if you join like-minded people across your city, you could build influential institutions. The next symbol of Rome that I think we can learn from is the Roman Fasces, which many of you know is a bundle of rods tied together by a strap or straps. It is often interpreted as a symbol of state authority and corporal punishment. But I read it differently because there are many cultures that use this symbolism and it can be seen around the world. For example, Genghis Khan employs this sort of symbolism when he describes how a female ancestor of his taught him that a single arrow can be easily broken, but a bundle of arrows doesn't break with ease. The Zulu monarchy in South Africa also uses similar imagery. Even the US government uses this ancient symbol. To me, the fasces symbolizes that power and strength come through unity, cohesion, and being aligned. African communities need to develop to small, united, aligned groups that are aligned for purposes that benefit their city. From creating building societies to community watch groups, it all starts with small community-based organizations. Julius Caesar, in his commentaries on the Gallic Wars, says about the Gauls: in every state, in every village and district, and almost in every single household, there are factions. To me, this shows how Julius Caesar viewed factions and disunity as a characteristic of badly governed states. It shows that Caesar saw factionalization as a critical weakness that could be exploited by enemies. Caesar also says, regarding the opinion that the Gauls should entertain in future, is that the resources of Italy are so great that if any loss should be sustained in war, not only could that loss be repaired in a short space of time, but that it could be supplied with much greater numbers. And those small units of organization, which are built in this modular fashion, can be stacked up to create greater order in society. You see, the modern world is complex, and high levels of organization, cohesion, and unity are non-negotiable. Right now, I believe that Africa is a bit too much like the Gauls that were described by Julius Caesar. There are too many factions in African society. In one African country, you can find more than 10 languages and tribes, which makes social cohesion and therefore development difficult to achieve. But if Africans united around common values, principles, and interests, it could cut across tribal lines. But it has to be done on a local level, with the intention to strengthen your local city. Rome shows us that the city-state is the best level of organization. Rome was not the only city-state to build an empire, which further reinforces the idea that the city-state is the most natural form of organization. From Plato's city to Prophet Muhammad's Medina to St. Augustine's city of God, even Aristotle talks about the city. All this just shows or seems to highlight to me that the city-state is a powerful level of organization and Africans need to strengthen that. And like a bundle of rods, which is more difficult to break than a single rod, an African city made up of organizations working in alignment to reach their goals can create an unbreakable city. And if our local communities become unbreakable like the Roman Phalanx, I believe that Africa's growth and development would be unstoppable. Thank you for your time, and I'd really like to personally take the time to thank everybody that has subscribed to this channel.